Hey writers, it's Megan Barnhart. I'm coming at you live. And today I'm going to be talking about how to proofread like a pro. So if you are here live watching or if you're watching the replay, I would love it if you jump in the comments and let me know what are your challenges around proofreading. When you go to proofread your writing, whether it's a chapter of your book or it's a blog post or an essay, what comes up for you? Where do you get stuck? Where do you hit a wall? Proofreading is one of the most challenging aspects of writing, and you can be as creative as all get out, and it doesn't matter when you come to proofreading. In fact, sometimes it makes it harder, and I'll explain why in a minute. But go ahead, take a minute, share with me what makes you crazy when you are trying to proofread or edit. I am getting us shared in the Write with Megan Facebook group. If you are not already there, come and join us. It's a group for writers, no matter what you are writing, and we support one another. We have writing prompts, we answer questions, so come on, join us there. Hey Lloyd, hey Sarah, thanks for joining me. I'll tell you what bugs me about proofreading. I'll see if you relate to this. This is how I used to proofread. Be like, okay, this is it. This is the final draft. I just need to proofread. So I would start reading with the intention of I'm just looking for typos or misspelled words or, anything that's wrong. Like I meant to type it and I wrote in instead. Like I'm just looking for that. And I'd start reading along and then I go, oh, I don't like that sentence. And I'd go in and start changing it. And then I'd keep reading and go, oh, wait, was that really the right term? Or, was it something different? And I'll go look it up. Does that happen to anybody else? You start in, you think it's your final pass through, you're just proofreading, and you find yourself changing a bunch of stuff. Let me know. Give me an emoji or comment. Do you get taken off track proofreading like that? So Sarah says, basically, when I start, I get blocked, but it was just somewhat forced to send to a publisher and haven't proofread it or edited it. Oh no. Well, we'll see how it goes having sent it off without proofreading or editing. Yeah, Sarah, I'm so glad you brought that up because that's another problem with proofreading. We might find it so frustrating that we just don't bother doing it. I'm guilty of this for small things. I'll have to type up a summary of something or, the minutes for the organization where I'm the secretary, and people will go, yeah, this is mostly correct, except, so-and-so's name is spelled wrong. I'm like, oh, don't, how embarrassing, such a simple thing, but it's easy to go, oh, I don't need to proofread. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Sarah. Hi, Carrie. Good to see you here. Okay, I saw some likes. I saw some people responding to that might be where you get stuck. You start in to proofread, but you end up doing more revising. You end up looking things up or making corrections. So here is my 3-step proofread like a pro plan to help you get past that. Okay, the first part of it is you are intentionally breaking things up into 3 steps. Instead of going, okay, I'm just proofreading, you're coming at this with a little bit more flexible and realistic approach. You're like, I know it's gonna take me, a few more passes to make sure everything is right. Then I'll do that final proofread. So the first step in your 3-step proofreading plan is to proofread like a brutally honest friend. You know that friend you have who's the person to tell you have spinach in your teeth? Everybody else, you're walking around at an event, everybody else is just smiling at you. And finally your friend's like, oh my God, come here. You've got something in your teeth. And you're like, oh, thank goodness. Like, why didn't anybody else give me that heads up? Okay. You want to read your writing as if you were that friend. It's not yours, so your ego isn't involved. And just in the way you would want to know if you had lettuce in your spinach in your teeth so you wouldn't be embarrassed, you want to know about anything that just sounds awkward, okay? So do a read through and look only for awkward constructions. Maybe you repeat words and phrases. This is where you might start noticing habits. Gosh, I keep using that same sentence structure, okay? So take a step back and read that way and just look for all those little, not so great things that a good friend would tell you about, or a good editor. So that's the first way to read. So far, so good. Does that make sense? And if you have questions at any point, I invite you definitely drop them in the chat box. Okay, once you have finished reading as a friend, you will have found those little niggling sentences. Remember what I said, what I used to do when I would sit down to proofread was start proofreading and then go, but I don't like that. You're taking care of those places where otherwise you would have gone, but I don't like that sentence. Okay. So you just get through them all. Then you're ready for your second step. And your second step is to read like a fact checker. Imagine you worked for a newspaper and your job is to read through. You don't care about sentences and how nice or not nice they are. You don't care about grammar and spelling or content, anything like that. You're just checking the facts. So what does that mean? If you're writing a novel, this would mean making sure you have character attributions correct. If you've ever been reading a book and suddenly the character's hair changes from, dark brown to bright orange, like that's kind of jolting, okay? So you're checking to make sure the facts are correct, but depending on what you're writing, those facts will, what the facts are will be different. So again, for your book, it might be character consistency, it might be place consistency. Was your last chapter in the heat of summer and now all of a sudden we're in a blizzard and it's supposed to be 2 days later? Check for things like that. This is where you can also fact check things that you're not really sure of. Maybe you've used an expression and you go, is that really how I write it? Is that really how it's spelled? I have a perfect example for you. You can rack your brains for something like, I couldn't think of the actor's name no matter how much I racked my brains, okay? That's an expression that a lot of us use when we speak, but we might not use it a lot in writing and we may never have written it. I found myself in a situation a few months ago where I went to write racking my brains and I thought, I don't know how that rack is spelled because I don't know like the origin of that expression. To me, the origin of expressions and idioms is fun. So I'm like, let me get on Google and look it up. Now, my first guess that it was like rack with a W, and I'm not even sure why, but I was like, it's related to wreaking havoc. I don't know. That was my first guess. I looked it up and it turns out it has to do with the medieval torture device, the rack. Like you are stretching your brains. No matter how much you're torturing your brains, you can't find the answer. Well, I thought that was a fun, interesting tidbit of information, but it also meant that I then spelled, racking my brains correctly when I went to write it. So that's what the fact checker does. Your fact checker goes and looks up things you're just not sure of. Is that does that expression mean what I think it means? Is another good one. Get on Google, let Google help you. How are we doing so far? Any questions coming up? Are you guys on board with doing the first two steps? Okay, I'm not sure I'm seeing your comments in real time. So if you're commenting and I'm missing it, I apologize, but there's no, I lost my powers of scrolling. No, my magical scroll powers are gone. Okie doke. If I miss your questions though, I'll always come back after the video and respond to them. So let's then talk about the third step of proofreading. Okay, this is where we get to what will actually sound like proofreading, which is checking to make sure that everything you intended to write is on the page and checking to make sure that what's on the page is only what you intended to write. And then this last part, you are going to read like a robot. Not a cool new modern robot with AI, not Watson. You're going to read like a 1950s science fiction comic book imagining of a robot, like a, Lost in Space kind of robot, a robot that says, does not compute, okay? And your job is to move your eyes over every single word and every single piece of punctuation and make sure they are what you intended. Now, this is a really tedious task, and it's also a challenging task. Now, remember at the beginning when I said proofreading can sometimes be harder if you're a creative person? Well, here's why. When we read our own writing, we usually read what we know we meant to write, not what's actually on the page. So if I know I meant for it to say in, but it really says it, my brain's going to automatically correct. In fact, our brains are too smart for our own proofreading good. And if you've ever seen one of those exercises that has a page of text, but all the words have been messed with, and the only thing that's correct about them is the first letter and the last letter, and the letters in the middle have been like replaced or jumbled up, but you can still read it. That lets you see firsthand the creative power of our brain. Our brains are looking for meaning. They're looking for things to make sense. So they're constantly hunting through what's there and giving us what it should be. And our job when we proofread is to just ask what's actually there. So the way I am successful at proofreading like a robot is to use my cursor and to move it over each word individually. And I read just what's there. And I'll often do it out loud, and I'll do it without any affect, without any connection to the meaning of the words, right? So like the cat sat on the mat. Totally tedious, I know, but you know what? It's also effective. If you find this easier on the printed page, then just use your finger or a pencil or a pen in the same way you would use the cursor. And this is going to help you catch things that are there that aren't supposed to be. Maybe I've repeated a word. Maybe I have a stray period or a stray comma. This will help you catch missing capitalization, because if you're really looking at the word, you'll have enough, your eyes will be on it long enough to go, oh, that word starts a sentence and it's not capitalized. So just move your eye over the page like a robot and don't read for meaning, simply read for what's there. Rachel says, I have that issue when my brain puts what's meant to be there and I don't see the errors. Yes, we all do. And we do it even for other people's writing. Like I said, that example of, the page of text that's all jumbled and you are amazed at, you can still read it. So we're filling in so many of the blanks, which is wonderful, because if you actually had to decode every single sound and every single word on a page of text, reading would be so slow and laborious. So it's wonderful that our brains do that, but it sucks for proofreading. And of course, the other thing that makes it easier is if you have somebody else's, if you have another set of eyes, because we know what we intended to write and somebody else doesn't. It's easier for that person to see where there are flubbed words, or did you mean from there? Because you actually have form, all those letter transpositions, the fun stuff. So yeah, Rachel, it's the robot reading definitely helps, but having a friend, having a good editor help as well. Okay. Yes, Rachel says reading it out loud to yourself helps. Hey, Lori, good to see you. All right, so those are the 3 proofreading steps. You read like a brutally honest but loving friend. You read like a fact checker, and then you read like a robot. And the most important thing is to really take the time to do each one of these separately, because proofreading is challenging to begin with. If you are trying to focus on 3 components, or like a 3 different possible goofs, it's so much harder, right? Than if you're like, I'm only looking for missing or extra words, and like what I meant to be on the page is on the page. If that's the only thing you're looking for, you're going to be a lot more likely to find those mistakes. So break it up, do it in these 3 steps. Now, how you use these 3 steps is really your call. If you are doing a blog post, you can do that in one sitting. You can just read through like a friend, then read through like a fact checker, and finally robot read, because you're probably dealing with 1,000 words or less. But if you are doing this for your novel, you might want to go chapter by chapter and just break it up. And you would do this proofreading stage, at the very end of all of your revising. This is in the editing stage. This is once everything else is finished, when you go, okay, I'm just ready for that final proofread to make sure everything's looking good. Okay, so if you do have more questions, or if you struggle with something in particular with proofreading, I would love to know. Please go ahead and leave it in the comments, and I will circle back around and answer your questions. If you found this video helpful, please do give it a like, share it with another writer you know. And if you're already in the Write with Megan Facebook group, invite other writers you know who you think would benefit from finding writing buddies, beta readers, getting support and accountability, writing prompts, getting their questions answered, and just generally hanging out with writers. I don't know why I needed that eyebrow movement, because we're like a bad influence. Hang out with us and you'll find yourself wanting to write a book. But I happen to think that's the best part of it. I'm at the stage now where I'm looking, or I'm no longer looking, but I was looking for beta readers for Recipe for Drafting, and it's just the best feeling to go, oh, I know who my writing peeps are, and just reach out and say, hey, I got a book coming down the pike. Can you help? So find your tribe of writers. It really is powerful. That is all for today. I will catch you all next time, and in the meantime, I wish you happy writing. Take care. Bye.